Today, we are looking at Jesus' prediction of his death and resurrection. It's the most detailed account that we see in Mark as he warns his disciples of what is yet to come. Stick around to find out more. Recorded at the Running H Studio, you're listening to Venture Tabernacle. It's like venture capital, except that the investment is made in your soul. This is where America hangs out to talk about anything and everything from a biblical perspective. I'm your host, Ty Hervey. Join me as we learn to view the world through the objective lens of the Bible. All right, folks, welcome back for another episode of the Sunday Sermon on the Venture Tabernacle podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, we are going through the gospel according to Mark, verse by verse and story by story. Our text for today will be Mark chapter 10, verse 32 through 34. It says this, "And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, 'See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise.'" That's our text for today. Jesus has just finished teaching about the high cost of discipleship, that if anyone were to follow him, they would have to sacrifice much to do so. And if you missed it, you can go back one episode and hear all about it. But in that light, the people were amazed and terrified. Jesus separates his 12 disciples for further instruction, and he warns them about what waits for them in Jerusalem and how bad it will be, how gruesome their fate will be. And he goes into great detail in predicting his death and resurrection, yet the disciples still choose to follow him after this interaction. The bravery that they had in this moment is admirable, even if it is partially because they don't fully grasp the gravity of the situation they're in. And as I read these verses, understanding the depth of suffering that Jesus is about to endure, and I can imply by the teaching that came directly before this that the same suffering awaits me if I follow Jesus, I have to ask the question, if I were in the shoes of the disciples, would I have been so brave as them? Or would I have folded in the face of pressure? And to be honest, I'm really not sure. I would love to say that I would have been brave and continued to follow Jesus, but the reality is I just don't know. And this is the third time that Jesus has warned his disciples about his impending death. He first warned them in Mark chapter 8, verse 31, where he explained that his sacrifice was necessary for their salvation. And the second time was in chapter 9, verse 31, where he confirmed that his death was not an option if salvation was to be given to the world. And this is the third time where he shares the details of the coming event. And in the face of this dark prediction, Jesus is steadfast and resolute. Fear is not a controlling emotion for him. Instead, he is calm, cool, and collected. Jesus knows that he is going to be betrayed by one of his own, that he's going to be condemned to death in a false trial over false charges, that he will be mocked, ridiculed, beaten, spitten on, and ultimately killed. But he also knows that he will rise again, that his sacrifice would be the necessary atonement for our sins. And with that hope in mind and the future reward awaiting him in heaven, Jesus marches on to Jerusalem, to the very city where he will be killed. And in our text today, we see yet another reminder of the ultimate message of Mark's gospel account. That is to present Jesus as the suffering servant and Son of God in light of the Jewish rejection, and prove that he is the only way to salvation while demonstrating what a true discipleship relationship looks like. If you've never entered into that relationship, would you choose to put your faith in Jesus Christ today? It's the most important decision you could ever make. And that marks the end of this episode of the Venture Tabernacle podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you same place, same time next week.